Andrew argues that society always collapses back to just brute force, and because of that, men enforce and also grant rights. Let's see how the mental gymnastics hold up here.
The reason I like to hone in on this idea that rights are a figment, at least how we perceive them in the term of positive and negative rights in modernity, they're a complete fiction. They're completely made up. They're a product of the mind. What I'm trying to always do is force a person to evaluate this so that they understand that if there are indeed rights, if that is something we can come to, then they're going to have to be divinely grounded, or you're not going to ground them at all. It's not going to be possible to ground any type of right, period, unless it comes from the divine, and that's it.
Here he sets up a false choice. Rights are either from God or made up, and ignores the obvious third option, that rights come from human agreements and legal systems. He also contradicts his own claims elsewhere that men grant rights.
Rights come from men. So if enforcement is crucial to them, men are the enforcers of those rights, not women. So therefore, you're basically begging men for rights.
He makes this claim basically every other video he does. Men grant rights, but wait a minute, here it's like, oh wait, maybe it's from God. Maybe he is doing like a distinction here between legal rights and human rights, although everywhere so far where somebody tried to differentiate, he just muddles them back together. So it seems like it's all the same to him. But for legal rights, it's the government's granting the rights, which would be just people in general, men and women, whoever is in power in the government. Technically, human rights are more of just kind of natural rights that most of us agree that we have them. And we have these legal systems set up to basically protect those human rights and write them out as legal rights. It's kind of like a hierarchy. So there's human rights and then there's legal rights. So you may not always have legal rights. Just because women haven't risen up for more legal rights in some parts of the world yet doesn't mean they can't. Women are on average less physically aggressive and are often socialized to be more submissive and to avoid confrontation. In cultures where religion and tradition reinforce these roles, they may not demand rights, but that doesn't mean it's impossible, and history shows women have fought for the rights elsewhere. So the idea they never can is nonsense. So whether you think that human rights are granted by God or just a natural phenomenon, etc., that's not something that people can take away. That's something that people can violate, but legal rights are something that people can grant via government, basically. But so far, it just seems like it's all the same to him, so that makes it extra confusing.
Right is a figment of your imagination, which was completely and totally made up, and it's used interchangeably with what is actually true, which is force. Yeah, every idea that you have, secular idea that you have of rights, is actually just an appeal to force. You have a right to a gun. You have as much of a right to a gun as you have force to protect your right to own one. You have as much a right to speech as you have force to protect this right to speech and every other right thereof.
Collapsing rights into force erases law and morality. So by that logic, the richest person has the most rights since they can buy the most muscle, and a right violated is still a right. Crime doesn't erase the law that it breaks. Something else I was thinking of recently, you know how that saying we have where guns don't kill people, people kill people? Well, if you can tie it in to make a metaphor here as well. So force is a tool. You can wield force, but if the person who is wielding the force is using manipulation, ooh, scary, or money, or some other means of persuasion, the strong people, even men, whoever, they are the ones wielding the power. Just because somebody is physically doing something doesn't mean they are the ones pulling the strings. So force is a tool. The person who directs it holds the power. If women can direct enforcement, for instance, we've covered in previous episodes, court, cop, money, budget, male allies, family, friends who are men, that's real agency.
They have a right to do whatever the government is willing to use force to allow them to do. And that's it. It's that simple.
This swaps out existence for enforcement. Rights exist first, then we build systems to enforce them. Systems enforce rights. People decide how to use those systems.
Have no force to do anything. All they can do is whine. All they can do is whine and complain, right? They have to appeal to men to utilize force to give them whatever rights they want. How can I demonstrate this? Let's look at most of the world. Most of the world, women have no rights. And who can they appeal to for them? Only to men. Only to men. They can never appeal to themselves. There's never been a single instance, and not one single, and I've looked through the entire historic standard, all recorded history that I can find, I've never found a single instance of women overthrowing the chains of oppression by force. They've never done it even one time. They always have to appeal to men. And this is what forced doctrine is stating, is that really, for feminists and for women, their rights are actually just granted to them by men. That's actually what's going on. Men are granting them their rights, and men can take those rights away. So you better hope that men appeal to the divine.
He's basically claiming that women have no real power, that men grant rights and can just yank them anytime. And rights aren't actually owned by whoever's strongest. I think we kind of covered that previously as well. We're not going to have to beat a dead horse here, but force is just a tool. The agency sits with the person directing it. You know, guns don't act, people act. If women can get laws enforced through courts, police, budgets, or male allies, they're using the tool. That's power and agency. Yeah, so there is no, like, men HQ. There are some men that fought for women's legal rights, and others fought against them. That just proves that rights are the result of conflict and consensus, not male unity. Do tech workers give you rights because we control the systems and could shut them off? We have leverage, but we don't own your rights. If something can be just turned off at will, that's a privilege. Rights can be violated, not erased. So saying men can take away the rights anytime, that admits that you're talking about violations, not the non-existence of rights. So you can just say, you know, permissions, privileges, etc. Why do you have to use the word rights specifically? Like, you're just muddying up language here. And if you mean one word, just say that word. Say permissions, okay? It's still messed up that you think that whoever's strongest just gives permission to all these other people to, you know, exist and live their lives. That's still messed up, but at least it would make a little bit more logical sense, just a little bit. Words mean things, so let's use the words how they're meant to be used.
Just so you understand, and I see people always conflate this argument. In fact, the super chatter did. Because everything will eventually reduce to force does not mean that society always operates inside of the mode of force. It will just always end up going back to force, always, inevitably.
He admits society often runs outside of force mode, but claims that we'll inevitably collapse back to force without explaining how or when. Force can break a system, but that doesn't mean that force defines the system. Rights are sustained by norms, laws, cooperation. If things return to force, why doesn't he tell us when and by whom? Without these specifics, it's just unfounded prediction.
Inevitably. So you can have brainwashed societies, which we have right now, and you can have people who operate inside of these delusions and operate as though there is power where there is no power.
He calls social norms and legal systems delusions. That's just to dismiss the power that he doesn't like, but these norms steer behavior. If people obey laws, that's real power. And labeling women's gains as brainwashing, that's just avoiding discussing the actual institutions and alliances that give women agency. It's just dismissing stuff for no particular reason. It's just, okay, we'll label this thing brainwashing, and then we'll label permissions as rights, and we'll mess up the language here so it's all just spaghetti and you figure it out. We're right because it's messed up, and look how confusing it is now. And come on. Oh, man. The argument here is that power isn't just physical. It includes the ability to shape norms and laws.
Power. In fact, some of the most powerful people on planet Earth are able to manipulate people into thinking they have all sorts of power, which they do not actually have. This is part of a game of psychological manipulation.
So here he's admitting that psychological manipulation, as he calls it, that works and changes outcomes. It's a form of power. You can't just dismiss it as fake while describing how it works. So you're describing how this psychological manipulation actually works and changes outcomes. That's a form of power, and what you're just dismissing it because it's not physical power? What does that matter? You're drawing this arbitrary line of, oh, this counts, this doesn't. If influence didn't matter, then why would anybody bother with persuasion or propaganda? Nonviolent leverage counts as power. This shows that even by Andrew's own account, power isn't just about fists. It includes tactics like persuasion, and that's something that women and men can both use.
There's no doubt that men can oppress men, and there's no doubt that women can use the levers of power to also be oppressive towards men for their own aims. That can happen.
Just seconds after calling women's power an illusion, he admits that women can use the levers of power to oppress men.
Pulling levers?
He can't have it both ways. If women can oppress men, then women have real agency beyond muscle. And this contradicts his force doctrine.
Think of it this way. You're inside of a prison, okay? And there's 2 guards and there's 100 inmates. The 2 guards can keep the 100 inmates under control, right? But if the inmates collectively go, these guys, what happens to the guards?
So here his example proves that collective action can overpower a force monopoly. The guards control the inmates only because the inmates let them. Systems only work when people agree to follow them. If everyone stops respecting the rules, the guards have no chance. So it just shows that numbers and coordination matters way more than just physical strength. Rights survive because people defend them together. And it directly undermines his claim that just muscle alone rules. The very story that he tells right here with the prison, that cuts against the thesis. So women can all get together and fight off whatever force. I mean, if people could just get together, if collective power, it matters, right? Can overcome whatever physical, even if the other side is stronger, if you just collectivize, you can overcome it. Now I'm sounding like a dirty commie. Thanks for that.
So the oppression of men is a socially constructed delusion.
As much as it is for women.
So if oppression is a delusion for everybody, he can't claim that men's oppression is real while women's is just imagined. Again, drawing these arbitrary lines. Money, property, marriage, all of these are also social constructs, yet we treat them as real. You can't just selectively call something a delusion just when it benefits women. By framing oppression as imaginary when women talk about it, he just minimizes women's experiences and feeds into his own narrative that women have no real power.
Well, I'm not sure why it's valid to talk about the oppression of men under this delusional system, but we can't also talk about the way women are negatively affected by it.
We can talk about, and women they used to talk about the issues that they had all the time from the moral high ground when they weren't being utilized as political tools.
Every rights fight is political by nature, so suffragists, civil rights activists, and labor organizers all use politics to get change. Here he admits that persuasion and lobbying used to work, which concedes that soft power exists.
Why can't those women who have their hands on the levers of power use it for women's aims like feminism?
They do, and what we end up with is antinatalism and all sorts of nonsense, which is why it's going to reduce back to a power centralization where men eventually collectively eliminate women's rights.
He says women do use power, then waves it off as nonsense. That concedes agency, then he tries to deny it. If women can move institutions, they're aiming the tool. This undercuts this whole men have the monopoly on force line from just a minute earlier. Policy shifts mean that the tool is being directed by more than just men.
Men uniquely are in a position to throw off any change of conditionals they don't like collectively with force. Men can do that and have done that. We did it in this nation. We've done it. I mean, all throughout the historic standard, if men find themselves in conditionals they don't like, they literally just kill everybody until they get to the conditionals that they like. That's actually what they do. But women can't do that.
Revolutions run on logistics, money, alliances, and ideas just as much as blood. Muscle alone never topple the system. Pretending they cannot fight is going against history. If men could simply kill their way to any outcome, why did suffrage succeed? Why do any political movements succeed without all this carnage? By painting brute force as a male superpower, he's ignoring that women can steer law and armies through influence and proxies. The very thing that the whole pew-pew analogy illustrates. Force is a tool that anybody can use. Agency lies with the one directing it, not their gender or sex. Sex/gender, whatever you want to call it. I don't care.
They steal from Christians. They steal from Christians across the board. They steal their entire worldview from Christians. They steal all forms of benevolence from Christians. They steal all the good stuff. And then they just want to add all the degeneracy in there. They want to sprinkle in the degeneracy while justifying it through our worldview. That's what's so crazy. They have no grounding foundation for anything. Tommy Lauren, for instance, told me that women have no duties at all to men. No duties at all. Only men have duties the opposite direction. And by the way, Jay, we're born to have those duties according to her, right? So according to her and feminists like her, what men are is they're disposable income wallets. We get to pay for everything for women, but don't worry about it, Jay, because we get to watch them enjoy them spending all of our money, right? That's how we're apparently hardwired, according to these people. But yes, they steal the Christian ethical worldview. That's what they do. All their concepts of harm, murder, theft, everything, totally stolen from us. All of it stolen from us. And then what they do is they sprinkle in degeneracy as a new form of harm.
He makes an appeal to origins, claiming that secular morality is stolen from Christianity, ignores the rules against murder and theft that predate Christianity and appear in every culture, labeling dissenting ethics as degeneracy. It's just name-calling, it's not an argument, it doesn't tell us why modern ethics are wrong. He's portraying feminists as women who only want men's wallets in a caricature. Feminists advocate for equality in pay and duties, not spoiling. I don't know how much necessity there is for feminists anymore, but honestly, like, I thought that the whole fight, whatever they were trying to do, I thought that was over. But I mean, hearing that apparently women have to beg men for rights, I'm starting to lean towards like, hey, maybe they had a point there or something. I don't know. I'm all kinds of confused now. I was all gung-ho against it. We don't need it. And I mean, this dude is seriously pushing me like towards that side, and it's super weird for me. It's weird for me. Unusual, different. Opinions changing can be uncomfortable, and it's uncomfortable. I don't know. We'll figure it out together.
Yeah, enforcement. So men's power comes. So this is my viewpoint.
Go ahead.
Is that all power and everything operates through force, whether you think so or not. When you're talking about soft power, you're talking about seduction. So you're talking about seduction and you're talking about manipulation. And the thing that's interesting about that, though, is that that's a power men have too. And historically, men also can apply seduction and manipulation to great effect, but women can never apply force. They can't apply force. So
Courts, contracts, and police are all forms of force, and women play roles in all of them. Force isn't sex/gender/whatever locked. Women use force via law, military service, wealth, politics. Sure, it's not the most common that a man is going to be weaker than a woman, but so what? There's all kinds of disparities in power and outcomes, etc., and we don't just arbitrarily draw lines where things look a little different in percentages and say that one side grants rights to the other side. It's ridiculous. Do all able-bodied people give rights to the disabled because they can overpower them? So what, the disabled have to beg for rights from all the people who can, walk and whatever? It's kind of messed up, right? Blue-collar workers tend to be stronger than white-collar workers. I'm gonna take a guess on that one. Do all the blue-collar workers give out rights to white-collar workers? Is that how that works? I mean, you can draw up all kinds of arbitrary lines where physical power or force or power in general is imbalanced and say, oh, well, just because it's different here, that means that one gives rights to the other. That's quite a leap. Seriously. How does that compute? It just, to get from point A to point B, that's a big jump. That's a lot of mental gymnastics you gotta do to get there. I'm not seeing it. Oh, all tech workers. So as a member of the tech worker class, I presume that I give all of you rights now, because all of us tech workers, we can all get together and disable all technology, or we could just stop maintaining it, and the world will go to complete chaos and crap. So you're gonna be in trouble. Do you have to beg me for rights? Please don't. That would be weird. So all of these groups, they do have leverage, but they don't grant human rights. Just because you have power over somebody else in some way, that doesn't mean you're granting rights.
Well, no, I was just, you were talking about how you package the prescription somehow, whether it's secular and you appeal to people's rationality or truth or mythology, you appeal to people's imagination and emotionality. Those are communication tools. It's obvious that you're seeking truth. I don't understand the good. And I just come back to, if men have responsibility but no authority, like, who grants men the authority? Is it a divine right of kings? Is it a mythology? Violence. Or do we convince? It's violence. It's force. We don't have the convenience of violence. We don't have that. We're not going to do that.
Yes, ultimately, that's exactly what's going to happen.
It's eventually going to happen. So eventually we're going to either repeal the 19th or unmake the birth control pill, or just descend into chaos and everything gets a hard reset.
Here's what
I heard it here first. Benji wants to repeal the 19th. I'll say I
would like to know how everyone is going to do that. I would love
force the same way we gave it. Force.
Yeah, there's inevitabilities, right? There's inevitabilities to decadence.
Declaring inevitability, that is not evidence. Past societies changed for many reasons, and Economic shift, technological changes, and policy reforms all played a role. So if brute strength ruled, tech and finance wouldn't dominate outcomes. And just looking at history, we can see that ideas and coordination matter way more than just raw muscle.
Well, there's inevitabilities to decadence, and we can look at the societies before us, which lasted for hundreds or thousands of years, but we can always see what happens when you have egalitarianism, currency deflation, and decadence. And every single time, it's a predation.
Is it ever corrected?
Yeah, it does. It always corrects, in fact, but it always.
Listing egalitarianism, deflation, and decadence altogether makes it unfalsifiable which one is actually supposed to cause collapse. Modern corrections usually involve those with money and power steering the outcome, and that's about class and resources, not sex/gender/whatever.
Women's rights.
You can't prove that's actually going to happen.
I can. Well, I can't prove for sure, but I can show you historically what the standard has been this, is that always what ends up happening is the force doctrine gets reintroduced and rights collectively are taken away from women. It's not that this is something I advocate be done. I'm just telling you that that's what's going to happen.
Okay. Yeah.
That's an event. It's an eventuality, which basically is inescapable.
Here he admits that he can't prove it, but then calls it inescapable. That is an appeal to inevitability. There's no how, who, or when. A forecast without conditions, that's not evidence. Saying rights get taken away concedes the real point. Rights can be violated, not erased. If they can be switched off at will, that's a privilege, not a right. Majority does not mean rights. Just men being more numerous or stronger does not make them rights givers. The same way that able-bodied people don't grant rights to disabled people, blue-collar folks don't grant rights to white-collar people, and that tech workers don't grant your rights because we could just shut systems off. Whenever force is used depends on people and institutions choosing to use it. If women can steer those choices via courts, cops, budgets, men being their allies or family, or being manipulated by them, as you say, that's real power, and it matters.
Because they have the monopoly on force.
Okay,
and all of your subjective morality is going to reduce to force. That's why. And so they can enforce whatever the hell they want, and might makes right if you're a subjectivist. What else does it make?
I mean, he claims that men control force and says that, on a subjectivist view, might makes right. Even if we grant that frame for argument's sake, it doesn't follow that women lack agency. Law, budgets, votes, coalitions, and armed women and female officers all direct how force is used. Guns don't act, people act. Whoever points courts, cops, or resources in a direction is the one exercising power. Women can and do that, directly or through allies. And rights aren't owned by whoever's strongest. They're sustained by people choosing to enforce them. So agency sits with the chooser, not the metal or the muscle. We heard his force doctrine claiming rights are imaginary and less divine, that women's power is a delusion, and that society inevitably collapses back to brute force, but he repeatedly concedes that women use the levers of power.
Levers.
And even his own examples show coordination and belief can override force monopoly. Rights are social and legal realities. So whoever wants to stay in an echo chamber, you can go ahead and dislike the video. Thank you.
Cable cars, they're fun. Everyone gets on board and becomes a rhesus monkey. No one talks on a cable car. They just hang and stare. And the guy in the front, with no steering wheel at all, just going, what? What's this? Pulling levers. Is it 4 levers that just do fuck all? Is it? And he's always ringing that bell going, how, ding, ding, ding. Endless bell ringing. What is he, Hunchback of Notre Dame?